The first time I realized my own mother saw me as competition, not a daughter, I was standing in my childhood living room watching her laugh too hard at my boyfriend's joke. It wasn't a mother's pride, it was flirtation. And in that moment, I knew something was deeply wrong. My name is Emma. I'm 24 years old, and for the past 6 years, my romantic life has been systematically destroyed by the one person who was supposed to protect me. Every relationship I tried to build crumbled the same way, not because of cheating or incompatibility, but because my mother could not stand the idea of me being chosen over her. My mother, Patricia, is 52 and effortlessly beautiful. She was a model in her 20s and has lived her entire life like the spotlight still belongs to her. Every morning is a ritual of makeup, hair, and gym sessions with a personal trainer. She dresses like attention is oxygen and she breathes it deeply. Growing up, I thought this was just confidence. I didn't realize it was something darker. Anytime I brought a boyfriend home, the pattern repeated itself. She'd suddenly wear tighter dresses. Her hugs would linger just a little too long. Her compliments would cross invisible lines. "You're so handsome," she'd say, fingers resting where they didn't need to be. She'd laugh at jokes that weren't funny and look at them like I wasn't even in the room. For a long time, I blamed myself. I wondered if I was imagining things, if I was being insecure or dramatic. After all, who suspects their own mother of flirting with their partners? It felt like an accusation too ugly to say out loud, even in my own head. Then there was Tyler. Tyler was kind in a quiet way. He taught elementary school near my apartment and had this gentle patience that made people feel safe around him. We dated for 4 months before I finally gathered the courage to bring him to Sunday dinner. I already felt sick with anxiety before we even arrived. The moment Tyler walked through the door, I saw it. My mother's eyes sharpened, her smile widened, and her posture changed like she'd stepped onto a stage. "Oh, Emma," she said, pulling him into a hug that lasted far too long. "You didn't tell me how handsome he was." Throughout dinner, she focused almost entirely on him. Questions about his job, his childhood, his future. Her hand brushed his arm when she laughed. When I got up to grab dessert, I heard her voice drop into something intimate. "Emma never brings anyone home," she told him softly. "I was worried she'd never find someone good enough." When I returned, Tyler looked uncomfortable, and my mother looked radiant. That glow, the one she got when she felt admired, made my stomach twist. After Tyler left, she cornered me in the hallway. "He seems nice," she said sweetly. Then came the familiar sting. "Maybe a little simple for you, though. An elementary school teacher, you could do better." That was her routine. First, she tested them, then she planted doubt in me, and finally, she reached out to them directly. 2 weeks later, Tyler sat across from me on his couch, his phone in his hands, visibly uneasy. "Your mom's been texting me," he said, not accusing, just confused. The messages were subtle but unmistakable, asking about his weekend, suggesting coffee, sharing yoga class schedules, framing everything as concern for my happiness while quietly creating a private connection with him. She was positioning herself as indispensable. "This feels wrong," he admitted. "I don't want to cause problems, but it's weird." I told him the truth then, that this had happened before, every time. He was silent for a long moment before saying something that hurt more than the breakup that followed. "Emma, this isn't normal." 3 days later, he ended things, not because he didn't care, but because he couldn't live inside a triangle where one corner was my mother. I cried for hours, not just over Tyler, but over the realization that this pattern would never stop unless I did, something drastic. That was the night I decided I was done being passive. If my mother wanted to sabotage my relationships, I would give her something to focus on, something she couldn't control, something that would finally expose the truth. I was going to introduce her to a boyfriend who wasn't real. The idea didn't come to me fully formed. It started as a quiet, desperate thought late at night while I stared at my phone, scrolling through old contacts and half-forgotten names. I wasn't trying to be clever. I was trying to survive. I needed proof that what I was experiencing wasn't just in my head. I needed something undeniable. Alex was my coworker from 3 years ago. We hadn't been close, but we'd stayed friendly. He was sarcastic, grounded, and most importantly, completely uninterested in drama. He had a girlfriend back then, now an ex, and he'd once joked that family manipulation was his biggest red flag. That memory stuck with me. I didn't message him for days. When I finally did, my hands were shaking. I didn't explain everything at first. I just asked how he was doing, if he still lived in town. His reply was casual, warm, normal. It felt like oxygen. When I finally told him the truth, I expected him to laugh, or judge me, or politely decline. Instead, he went quiet for a long time, then sent one sentence that made my chest tighten. "That's messed up. Yeah, I'll help." We met for coffee to talk it through. I laid everything out. The pattern, the flirting, the texts, the way every relationship collapsed under the same invisible pressure. Alex listened without interrupting, his jaw tightening with every detail. "This isn't about you. She's competing with you," he said finally. Hearing someone else say it out loud felt surreal, validating, terrifying. We set rules immediately. No physical affection beyond what was believable. No private conversations with my mother. No responding to messages if she reached out directly. And most importantly, Alex would document everything. Screenshots, dates, times, nothing left to memory. The plan wasn't revenge. It was clarity. The first dinner was a disaster in slow motion. My mother greeted Alex with the same overly warm enthusiasm, the same lingering touch, the same laser-focused attention. She laughed too loudly at his jokes, leaned in too close, and asked personal questions that had nothing to do with me. Alex played his role perfectly, polite, friendly, slightly reserved. He never flirted back, never encouraged her, and yet I could see it happening anyway. Her energy shifted, her eyes followed him, her voice softened when she spoke to him. Halfway through dinner, she asked him about his workout routine, then about his diet, then about his relationship history. It was subtle enough that anyone else would miss it, but I didn't. I had lived this script too many times. That night, Alex showed me his phone. She had followed him on social media within an hour of dinner ending, liked 3 photos, commented on one, sent a message framed as gratitude for keeping me happy. My stomach dropped. Over the next 2 weeks, the pattern intensified. She found excuses to text him, asked for advice, shared concerns about me, questioned whether I was too sensitive, too fragile, too dependent. Alex never responded. That's when she escalated. She started criticizing me openly, little jabs disguised as jokes, comments about my clothes, my weight, my career, always in front of Alex, always with a laugh. Emma's always been a bit insecure, she said one night, smiling at him like they shared a secret. I worry about her. I smiled back, jaw clenched tight, it hurt. After dinner, Alex looked shaken. She's trying to isolate you, he said. She wants me to see you through her lens. That was when I realized something horrifying. This wasn't accidental. It wasn't subconscious. It was calculated. The final straw came when she invited Alex to lunch, alone. She didn't include me, didn't mention it to me. She just assumed he'd go. Alex forwarded me the message without a word. I felt something inside me harden. Not anger, not sadness. Resolve. I told Alex to accept. Lunch happened on a Thursday. Alex recorded the entire conversation. She told Alex I was unstable, that I had attachment issues, that I exaggerated conflict, that dating me required patience and sacrifice. She framed herself as the supportive, understanding alternative. When Alex rejected her advances, gently but firmly, she snapped. Her voice changed. Her tone sharpened. She accused him of leading her on, of using her kindness, of misunderstanding her intentions. It was all there, every ugly truth, captured. When Alex played the recording for me, I didn't cry. I felt relief. For the first time in my life, I wasn't crazy, and my mother was finally exposed, not to the world yet, but to me. That night, I knew the next step would change everything, because now I had evidence, and soon she was going to realize she had underestimated me. The confrontation didn't happen the way I imagined it would. There was no dramatic showdown, no screaming match, no moment where everyone suddenly understood the truth. Instead, it unfolded quietly, painfully, the way real family betrayals usually do. I waited a full week after the lunch recording. I needed time to steady myself, to make sure I wasn't acting out of raw emotion. Every part of me wanted to rush in and throw the truth in her face, but I knew better. I had spent my whole life reacting. This time, I wanted control. Sunday dinner came again, like it always did, wrapped in the illusion of normalcy. The table was set neatly, candles were lit, my mother moved around the kitchen humming, calm and confident, as if she hadn't spent the last few weeks trying to dismantle my life piece by piece. Alex came with me, just as planned. He was quieter than usual, his presence steady but tense. I could tell he was nervous, not for himself, but for what this was about to do to me. That alone reminded me why I trusted him more than anyone else in that room. Dinner started harmlessly enough. Small talk, work updates, weather complaints. My mother kept glancing at Alex, measuring him, as if trying to figure out why her usual power wasn't working. I watched her carefully, noticing things I had been trained to ignore for years. Halfway through the meal, she did it again. Emma's been so emotional lately, she said lightly, cutting into her food. I worry she lets stress get the best of her. I felt Alex stiffen beside me. Something inside me clicked into place. Calm, clear, done. Actually, I said, setting my fork down, I think now's a good time to talk about that. The room went quiet. My mother smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Talk about what, sweetheart? I took out my phone. My hands were steady, which surprised me. About the messages, the lunch, the things you've been saying behind my back. Her smile faltered for just a fraction of a second. Then she laughed. Emma, what are you talking about? I looked at Alex. He nodded. I pressed play. Her voice filled the room, calm at first, then sharper, accusatory, manipulative. Every word hung in the air like smoke. When it ended, the silence was suffocating. My mother stared at me, then at Alex, her face unreadable. Then she cried. Not quiet tears, loud, shaking sobs. She pressed a hand to her chest and whispered that she felt attacked, betrayed, humiliated. She asked how I could do this to her, how I could ambush her in her own home. My father immediately stood up, furious, not at her, at me. How could you record your mother? Do you have any idea how cruel that is? I felt the familiar sensation of the floor dropping out from under me. The evidence was right there, undeniable, and yet somehow I was the villain again. She was just trying to help, my aunt said softly. You know how sensitive your mother is. Sensitive. The word burned. I tried to speak, but my voice cracked. Years of silence pressed against my throat. She told him I was unstable. She tried to isolate me. This has been happening my entire adult life. No one answered. My mother wiped her tears and straightened, her composure returning with terrifying speed. I think Emma needs therapy, she said gently. She's clearly under a lot of stress. That was the moment I understood. This wasn't denial. It was preservation. The family needed her to be innocent, because if she wasn't, then they had all failed me. I stood up slowly. My legs felt weak, but my mind was steady. I'm done, I said. I won't bring partners here anymore. I won't explain myself again, and I won't accept this. My father told me I was overreacting. My aunt said I was dramatic. My mother said nothing. She just watched me with a look I had never seen before. Fear. In the car afterwards, Alex didn't speak for long. Then he said quietly, they chose comfort over truth. I nodded. I wasn't surprised, just tired. That night, I cried harder than I had in years, not because I had lost my family's approval, but because I finally accepted that I never really had it to begin with. And in that grief, something unexpected happened. Freedom. For the first time, I stopped hoping they would change. I stopped waiting to be seen. I stopped shrinking myself to keep the peace. I sent one message to my parents the next morning. It was short, clear, final. I told them I was taking space, that I loved them, but I would no longer participate in dynamics that harmed me. I didn't argue, I didn't justify, I didn't explain. Then I blocked my mother's number. The silence that followed was terrifying, and then, slowly, it became peaceful. That was the moment my life actually began, not when the truth was revealed, but when I chose myself anyway. The weeks after that confrontation passed in a strange, suspended calm. Nothing exploded outward, but everything inside me had shifted. I no longer woke up with that familiar knot of dread in my stomach, the one that came from wondering what version of my family I would get that day. Silence replaced chaos, and at first the silence felt unbearable. Then it began to feel like rest. Michael noticed the change before I did. He said I slept deeper, that I laughed more easily, that I stopped apologizing for things that weren't my fault. Living with him felt steady, predictable in a way my life had never been before. No emotional landmines, no sudden accusations, just mornings with coffee, evenings with our dog curled between us, and conversations that didn't feel like tests I could fail. But peace, I learned, makes people uncomfortable when they benefit from your pain. Vanessa didn't reach out directly at first. Instead, her presence crept back in through other people. My mom mentioned her name casually on the phone, as if testing me. "Vanessa's been having a hard time," she said once. "She feels terrible about how things ended." I didn't respond. I had learned that silence was safer than honesty with my family. Then Jessica called. Her voice was low, careful. She asked if Michael was with me before she continued. That alone set off alarms in my head. She told me Vanessa hadn't let things go the way she claimed she had, that she was spiraling again, obsessing over Michael, over the fact that for the first time in her life, someone had rejected her completely. "She's been looking him up," Jessica said, like really looking him up. My chest tightened. Jessica explained how Vanessa had tracked down old social media accounts, court records, even people from Michael's past. She had convinced herself there had to be something darker, something she could use to regain control of the narrative. Vanessa couldn't accept that she lost because she wasn't the prize this time. That night, I told Michael everything. I expected anger, maybe fear. What I got instead was a tired kind of knowing. He said this wasn't new to him, that when you've made mistakes and paid for them, there's always someone waiting to use your past against you. He said the difference now was that he wasn't alone anymore. A few days later, the tension sharpened into something colder. My mother called again, her tone stiff, formal. She told me Vanessa felt unsafe around Michael, that she had told people he intimidated her at Thanksgiving, that she was considering talking to someone about it. I felt something in me snap. Not panic, not fear, rage, clean and focused. This wasn't just about family drama anymore. This was about someone trying to destroy a man who'd done nothing wrong simply because he didn't choose her. I realized then how far Vanessa was willing to go when her power failed. Michael listened quietly as I paced the living room, my thoughts racing ahead to worst-case scenarios. When I finally stopped, he looked at me and said something that surprised me. "What if we don't stop her?" I stared at him, confused. He explained calmly that false accusations fall apart under scrutiny, that if she was willing to lie to the authorities, the truth would eventually surface. He said the real danger wasn't exposure, it was letting fear dictate our choices. Then he showed me the recording. Hearing Vanessa's voice so clearly, her manipulation so obvious, made my hands shake, but it also grounded me. This wasn't my word against hers anymore. This was proof. We decided to wait. The waiting was the hardest part. Every phone call made my heart jump. Every knock at the door felt loaded. I hated that someone else's instability could still reach into my life like this, even after I had stepped away. Then, just as suddenly as it escalated, everything stalled. No police report, no confrontation, just silence again. Weeks passed. I started to believe maybe Jessica had been wrong, that Vanessa had finally hit a wall she couldn't break through. I allowed myself to breathe again, to imagine a future where my family's chaos no longer hovered over every good thing I built. Then my mom called about the hospital. She framed it like concern, like urgency, like obligation. Vanessa had been in a car accident. Nothing serious, but she was shaken. She wanted to see me. Every instinct in my body screamed no, but guilt is a stubborn thing, especially when it's planted in you since childhood. So I went. Not for Vanessa, for myself, to prove I wasn't running anymore. Seeing her in that hospital bed was surreal. Stripped of her usual armor, she looked smaller, fragile even. For the first time, she didn't smile when she saw me. She looked scared. When she apologized, really apologized, I didn't feel the victory I had imagined for years. I felt exhaustion. I felt grief for the person I had been before I learned how to protect myself. I believed she meant it, and I also knew that meaning it didn't erase what she had done. Walking away from that hospital room felt like closing a door I had been holding open my entire life. Later, when Jessica told me how close Vanessa had come to filing that report, I felt sick, not because it almost happened, but because it confirmed everything I had feared and everything I had survived. That night, Michael held me while I cried, not from sadness, but from the release of something old and heavy finally loosening its grip. For the first time, I understood that survival doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like choosing peace and refusing to apologize for it. The life we built after that didn't arrive all at once. It settled in slowly, quietly, the way real healing does. There was no grand announcement that things were better now, no sudden feeling of victory, just small, ordinary days stacking up into something solid and safe. Michael asked me to move in with him a few weeks after the hospital incident. He didn't make a speech. He didn't dramatize it. We were sitting on the floor of his apartment, eating takeout out of the containers, when he said it like it was the most natural thing in the world. I said yes without hesitation, surprising myself with how easy the answer felt. Our apartment was small and imperfect. The floors creaked, the kitchen was barely big enough for 2 people to stand in at once, but it was ours, and for the first time in my life, home didn't feel like a battlefield. It felt like refuge. We adopted Rocket not long after. He was a scruffy, anxious mutt with 2 big ears and a history of being abandoned. The shelter volunteer warned us he might take time to trust people. Michael knelt down and let Rocket sniff his hand, patient and calm. Rocket chose him immediately. Watching that bond form told me everything I needed to know about the kind of man Michael was. My family faded into the background, not completely gone, but no longer at the center of my emotional universe. I stayed in touch with my brother and Jessica. Everyone else existed at a distance, where their opinions could no longer hurt me. Then the letter came. Seeing Vanessa's handwriting on the envelope made my stomach twist. I stared at it for a long time before opening it, bracing myself for manipulation, excuses, or self-pity. What I found instead was something raw and unpolished, written without charm or performance. She told me about the abuse she suffered as a child, about not being believed, about learning that her body was the only thing people seemed to value. She wrote about how that twisted her understanding of love, attention, and worth. Reading it didn't erase my pain, but it reframed it. What struck me most was her honesty about me. She admitted she had been jealous of my stability, my independence, my ability to build a life without relying on attention. She admitted she had targeted my relationships not because she wanted those men, but because she wanted to feel superior to someone she secretly admired. I cried while reading it, not for her, but for the years of confusion and self-doubt I carried because no one ever told me the truth. I didn't forgive her, not fully, but I responded with something I had never given her before: clarity. I told her I understood her pain, but that understanding didn't mean access. I told her I needed distance, and that this boundary wasn't punishment, it was protection. She respected that, at least enough to step back. Time passed. Real time, not dramatic time measured by crises, but quiet months filled with routines and growth. Michael worked hard, I thrived at my job, Rocket learned how to trust, one day at a time. When Jessica called to tell me Vanessa was engaged, I laughed out loud from shock, not because I didn't believe people could change, but because I never expected to witness it. Hearing that Vanessa had found love with a woman, that she was calmer, more grounded, felt strange, but possible. When Vanessa invited me to the wedding, I didn't answer immediately. I sat with the decision, talked it through with Michael, examined my own motives. I realized I wasn't afraid of seeing her, I was afraid of seeing my family again. In the end, I said yes, not for her, but for myself, because avoiding them forever wasn't strength anymore. Facing them on my terms was. The wedding day came quietly. No drama, no confrontations. Vanessa looked different, not just in who she stood beside, but in how she carried herself. There was no performance, no hunger for attention, just presence. Michael stayed by my side the entire time, not because I needed protection, but because he wanted to be there. That distinction mattered. We left early, like we always do. Boundaries don't disappear just because healing begins. Now, when I look around our apartment, at Rocket asleep on the rug, at Michael flipping through a book on the couch, I feel something I never felt growing up. Enough. Not perfection, not certainty, just enough. I don't know what the future holds with my family or with Vanessa, but I know this. I was chosen, not because I competed, not because I proved anything, but because I was seen, and that has made all the difference.